So today we are talking with Julie Nise. Thanks for being here, Julie.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, my pleasure. I can't wait. I've had you on my personal podcast.
Yes.
This is the first time you've been on the Grow Ortho, but you'll be back.
I'm so excited. It's great.
Tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, maybe just 30-second intro.
Sure. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist who's gone off into specific kind of work. I do relationship training, and that would be, I suppose, mostly couples and personal relationships, but it's also extremely applicable to business relationships because in the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And I'm also a hypnotist and have a 20-year track record in actual corporate America, as well as a 20-year record now in human change work. So it's kind of an eclectic background.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And you've had the pleasure of joining me a couple times now in mastermind settings with orthodontists, so you kind of know a little bit, and you've been able to even do some coaching privately with different orthodontists
training in their offices.
Teams.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you're really kind of becoming an expert.
I know, it's so fun.
At all of this.
It's such an interesting profession.
It is. Yeah. So today we're going to be giving orthodontist and dentist, and really almost any type of private practice owner could watch this and take a lot away.
Yes.
But we'll filter it for orthodontist and dentist specifically. And the things that I see a lot of orthodontist and dentists with financial stress, with a burden.
Oh, huge. Yeah. The cost of going through school is, what, on average, $500,000?
Yeah. Yeah, anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in debt. I see a lot of them really kind of on the verge of burnout running the practice. So attrition has been a massive issue, especially since COVID.
Yes.
Even before, but then COVID really exacerbated the issue of now people can work from home, virtual jobs. And they were never really good at training or mentoring teams. And so they'll just, for instance, we've talked about the front desk. They'll just throw somebody in there. And
such a mistake.
Lowest qualified, lowest trained, lowest paid person is literally the gatekeeper for the doctor. And so one of the highest turnover roles is now the front desk, or other roles in the practice to turnover. And it's like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to be able to hire good people who stay with me. But it's easier said than done.
Sure.
So we're going to get into that. And then we're also going to talk about their personal life and their relationships with other people. And
so important.
This can benefit them in the community with referral strategies, how to network, how to be involved in the community, but then also at home with spouses, with kids, because that's, you're stressed out at work, then you go home and you're stressed out.
It's a vice, a pressure cooker.
So let's unpack these things.
Okay.
And I think my goal is, imagine if you could have all the new patients that you were wanting, that your schedule was filled, that you could same day start or have case acceptance very high conversion rate, that you actually come to work and your team comes to work being joyful, being happy, less stress.
No drama.
Maybe there's more efficiencies as this starts to happen where you can work 3 days a week instead of 4. And then maybe your personal relationships are going better at home. You're getting a better response from your spouse. That's paying off well. Your kids, you're having more time and better time, quality time with your loved ones. So that's my goal. And I think that's your goal for today.
And to give them some specifics on how to do that.
So let's jump in.
Okay.
So what do you think would make a significant difference for orthodontists and dentists to not get stuck in the details?
Which means pressure, stress, and overwhelm for them. Big time. Yes. So there are several things that I had in mind. One is outcome. To me, everything is about outcome. Everything we do and everything we say needs to be pointed toward one of our goals. And of course, they have many. They've got financial goals, practice goals, income goals, family goals, parenting goals, you name it. But if what you're doing isn't directly connected to one of your goals, it's actually either irrelevant or possibly damaging.
Mm.
And I don't think people with a beautiful, strong detail orientation have the other hand, the other skill, the other behavioral flexibility to be able to come up into the big picture and keep in mind their outcome. Because, boy, you can get lost in the weeds so fast.
That's
especially
true.
when all of your training gears you toward that.
And that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
after, and this is true for myself, you know, I love to kind of,
Details,
well,
I know.
what about this and like this? And yeah, but, you know, with doctors, it's on a totally different level because these are very smart people. I mean, they've been gone to school forever. They know a lot. They're great. And they're working in the smallest minute details with moving teeth or maybe doing something cosmetic. And it's the details really matter.
Oh, they do.
And so how do you do that and do that well while also acquiring this new skill of doing things maybe completely different
or the opposite. So it's called behavioral flexibility, which is something I teach a lot, as you know. And behavioral flexibility simply means, well, you might be really, really good at this, but there's an opposite skill or trait that might be useful to be good at too. For example, what you're talking about when you're talking about these details and the fine, minute things they do to change people's teeth and how they put brackets on and all those kinds of things, largely what they were taught to do in school, and may even come by it naturally, is they're doing what we call sort by distinction. That means they're noticing what doesn't fit or what isn't in place or what's different before they sort by agreement, which is the opposite skill, okay? So when you're sorting by distinction, one of the unfortunate side benefits is you tend to be a little judgy, a little judgmental, right, and a little critical. And because your mind is very naturally focused on what doesn't fit or what's out of place. Now, if you're a brain surgeon, you kind of need to know what tissue is not healthy and correct,
right.
What part is the tumor. So you want to sort by distinction and know what to take out, and similarly in their profession as well. But often in terms of dealing with human beings, which ultimately is what the doctors are doing now, they're not really dealing with teeth. They're dealing with human beings.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
And to deal with human beings, you have to be able to sync up with them and have rapport with them. And to do that, you need to be able to largely sort by agreement first. You can always sort by distinction or find out what the exception is or what you don't agree with second. But it's usually a good idea to sort by agreement first, and their training wasn't set up that way. It's also good with spouses.
Something that you taught me that was extremely powerful for me, and I think it'll be very powerful for those watching and listening, is when you're right, it means that someone else is wrong.
Yes.
And if you place yourself in that situation now where you're in a disagreement or somebody's trying to prove their point and it becomes this kind of battle, this exchange, none of us like to be wrong.
Well, that's true. And that's one of the main problems. First of all, as you said, if somebody's right, somebody has to be wrong. And nobody likes to be wrong. But the biggest problem with being right, and again, all their training is about doing things right, doing things correctly. So that's it's a beautiful skill to have. We're not denigrating it in any way.
Sure.
But we're saying it's like if you only have a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. Sometimes a wrench works really good. So the opposite of that would be to be focused on your goals. Because if you don't have a goal of being right, you don't. You have a goal of agreement, of a great relationship, of a happy office, of happy clients, patients, all that. So being right is not a goal. And it in fact gets in the way of the goal. So now to tie two things together, I just said, if what you're doing and what you're saying isn't directly contacted with one of your goals or not in the direction of something you really want as an objective, it's either damaging or irrelevant. So you being right a lot is, and I hate to say this, guys, irrelevant. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
And you can dovetail outcomes.
Yes.
You can find common ground, and that goes over a lot better with rapport, with trust, and with getting commitments from people.
That's right. That's right. Because it's a mutual benefit. If somebody thinks they're, as someone who used to really enjoy being right, I admit it.
Me too.
The problem is, an unintended consequence of that was a lot of people felt judged by that. Now, that was not in any way the way I meant it or intended it. But that's the way it comes off a lot of times if you run around being right. And whether you actually are right or not doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's the impression. We have to have a lot more sensitivity to how other people perceive us.
Mm-hmm. And talking about chunk size and getting in the details or being high level, there's also this art of being able to zoom out and kind of see things from the third person.
Yes.
Which I believe is very important.
What a lovely skill that is. Wow. So there is so much insight to be gained when you can, instead of being like in the weeds and in the thick of it, and sometimes we have to be, so that's fine. But the ability to pull back out of that, and as you said, from the third person, sort of look at what's going on, you have, and in that perspective, you have the ability to look around in what we call a bigger chunk size, and that way you can see kind of where your goal is, perhaps a better way to get it, and as you said, also to dovetail the outcomes. It's really important, especially if you're owning a business, that you, whatever the business is, that you make sure you have dovetailed outcomes for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to have high turnover, unhappy people, and a chaotic office.
Mm-hmm. And when you're in a moment like that where maybe you're defending a position, if you can let go, remove yourself, and zoom out and see from the third person of, okay, we're here, but I see where we need to go is over here. What's the best way to get there? What's the most useful way to get there?
Right.
Versus fighting to be right. And maybe it's with a team member. And you can see this when I see it all the time, even in instances with myself where I'm trying to defend something.
That's true for all of us.
What's going on with that other person? Are they shutting down?
Yeah, but see, that's not in their awareness when they're defending a position. It isn't for any of us. We're like, okay, game on.
Yeah.
And we're not thinking what you're thinking.
Right.
But that's one of the skills that we need.
How do we build that skill?
Well, it's called empathy, first of all. So I tell my clients all the time, one of the greatest relationship skills ever is the ability to come outside your head, your little grape, notice only what's going on in front of you, and respond to that. Getting out of your head is a huge thing. It's a very, very important skill. And most of us are all too accustomed to just being inside that little grape, just wandering around, thinking what we think, doing what we do. And honestly, it never occurs to some people they should do it differently, which is kind of scary.
Your mentor, Scott, told me something, and I'm paraphrasing, maybe you can clean it up, was they tried to find the answers, and maybe it was a cadaver or something, and they opened up his head, and there was no answers there.
Yeah, that's basically it. That we all think we have such brilliant stuff in our head and we have all the answers for everything. We know all this stuff. And somebody actually opened somebody's brain to find the answers and nothing there.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of mush.
Yeah, because it really does all happen out here. And what's going on in here, because of the brain, and I think the audience would love this because they're all into anatomy and science. And so let's talk about the anatomy of the brain.
Let's do.
And information. You're deleting information, you're distorting information, and you're generalizing.
That's
so you
right.
may think you've got all the facts, but their perception is their reality.
Yes.
And so, you really have to understand that. It's the same for us. And so, again, that common ground and dovetailing, and maybe it's not a either or, maybe it's not right or wrong, maybe it's an and. Maybe, again, trying to find that common ground.
And I love that you brought up that example because it's super important to understand. If you become very accomplished in self-development, self-improvement, and human change work, you have to quickly come to the realization that pretty much everything you thought was bullshit. It's not accurate. Okay, we all run around thinking it's accurate and true, but in fact it's not. And the easiest way to prove that is, and I use this example all the time, so picture an intersection, 10 people standing around the intersection looking at the intersection. At the moment, there's a car crash, okay? So the police come, they take 10 different reports from eyewitnesses. How many of those are going to be the same?
Zero.
Now, they all saw exactly the same thing, but to your point, the brain can't possibly take in all the information that's hitting it at any one moment. So it has to delete, distort, or generalize. And whatever just magically happens to get through those filters is what we think of as reality. So by definition, it may or may not be accurate. So a really good starting position is maybe I don't see this correctly, or maybe there's more to the picture.
And the least credible witness
In a court of law.
is an eyewitness.
That's correct. And that's why.
See this all the time in Matlock. I love going back and watching.
I know. I love Matlock. Yeah. Yes, it's true.
I saw him. And it's like, no.
Or My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
You know, that great thing at the end where they with the screen and the oatmeal and all that. Yeah, that's the cream of wheat. Grits. No, that was what it was.
So let's talk about what you respect. Do you respect people? Do you respect things, places? Tasks.
So people have preferences. We call those patterns, and you come by them naturally. Sometimes they can be modified a little bit, but you basically have a sort of an organic tendency to one or the other. So what gets your attention, what seems interesting to you, what you tend to focus on, and what you gravitate toward could be people, places, things, tasks, or systems. Now, for most of our audience, they are primarily tasks and systems people.
So they love information.
Information and tasks and systems, they all go together, which is fine, okay? There are many people like that are wildly successful. But at this point, we're talking to an audience of people that are probably interested in growing their practices or expanding or in some way improving and so forth beyond where they are now. And to do that, like I said, they're not in the teeth business, they're in the people business.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be absolutely amazing and brilliant with how you move teeth, but if you can't communicate that in a way that makes people want to hire you or want to get their braces from you or have their dental work done from you, then what good is it?
And what do you believe is the best way to communicate that? So you've worked with some orthodontists and dentists, and what I find, I'll just kind of set up from my perspective, is the ones who struggle with communication actually think they're really great at communication.
Every time.
And a lot of times the best communicators actually ask the best questions. And they also have a way of relating their information with the common person.
And what the common person is interested in.
Correct.
So there's a connection.
It's not your skull. It's not all these medical terms that you don't know, that you learned in dental school or your residency. None of that. The patient has no idea what you're talking about. You know, and actually, this is funny. I saw a post in an orthodontic group a couple days ago that was asking them, do they like the traditional X-ray or the new 3D X-ray? And the argument was for the old X-ray that's just normal, because what's happening is people are now pulling up this new X-ray that shows all the bones and teeth and skull, and it kind of looks like you're looking at a dead person on the screen, but they think it's great.
Ooh, yeah.
And it gets them into more details and more terms.
Technical stuff.
And so again, this tech and this information, why doesn't that work a lot of times with patients?
Well, because they're not syncing up with what the patient needs or wants to know.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking, that is a very self-absorbed standpoint. I'm reminded of that very funny story one of the orthodontists told in the last meeting, where I think it was the TC literally kicked him out of the office because he'd go in there and spend like 20 or 30 minutes describing in great detail all the technical stuff he was going to do and the composition of this and that. And the potential patient, had long since glazed over and lost any desire to do anything because he was completely overwhelming them with things they didn't need to know. So there was a terrible mismatch in their communication. And a mismatch is not going to end up in a conversion. I can promise you that. So what I'd like to see is that the people we're talking to today start developing as much respect for their people skills and their communication ability as they have for their technical ability. And then they would be, sky's the limit, successful.
And a lot of this comes down to the feedback, right? Because let's say I think I'm doing it right, or maybe I need to make some changes. Well, you'll know if you're doing it the best way, most useful way. And then if you go through a series of changes by the feedback. So is your conversion rate going up? Are you getting more same-day starts? Is your TC happier?
Getting more reviews?
Better reviews? And that's the way I look at it. So when people, again, are telling me, yeah, no, it's needed, the patients really like this, but your conversion rate is 55%, well, the data tells a different story.
It's opinion versus concrete, demonstrable facts. That's right. Very important that you go with the facts.
What about things like ego, maturity?
So for the most part, people that are in our audience today are going to tend to be ego up kind of people. Okay. So they, first of all, have a high degree of belief and confidence in their skills and ability. Secretly, they worry that they might not be as good as they think they are. But really, for the outward presence, they have certainly that confidence. And they kind of hang their hat on that. So ego down is when you are basically just open to what you don't know, or open to feedback, maybe curious in a genuine way that doesn't threaten who you are. So it doesn't mean they're not a good orthodontist or a good dentist if they say, well, really, what was your experience? How did you like that? Or did that work for you? Is there anything we could have done better? That's all great stuff to ask people to get some quality feedback to maybe change some things for the better. Yeah. But if you're in a very defended ego up position where it's all fine, it's all great, and I'm good, and I'm smart, and I'm the best one to do this, and I know what I'm doing, you're not open. It can be threatening if you're not used to going ego down. But again, that's that behavioral flexibility. Sometimes it's really great to be ego up, and there's usefulness in that. But other times, your ego down is a better position to take.
So how do you make patients happy while still being excellent at your technical skills?
And that's, again, an and thing, not an either or.
Okay.
It's definitely an and thing. So the primary skill that most physicians actually lack is empathy, the ability to put yourself in the other person's position. So if you were really good at that, and by the way, you can be taught. If you're really good at that, then you kind of become invisible to yourself, and you get very plugged into, aware of, or synced up with what's going on with the other person. That's empathy. And that really means that you can anticipate a whole lot better what their experience is going to be and how they feel about things, because it's really what are your patients or potential patients thinking, feeling, hearing, sensing that makes them take the actions they do. So if you get an empathy or rapport with them, and remember, rapport simply means really all people prefer others resembling themselves. So there's this syncing up, this matching who they are, what they are, how they think in your communication process. So then you have the ability to give them what they need and want in a way that makes them do a same-day start or whatever it is that you want them to do.
And with what you've seen so far with our audience, what are some areas where they're lacking empathy, maybe where they're not realizing exactly how to have empathy, or where could that improve? How does that help them at home too?
Well, that's a whole nother subject, is how these same skills that will help you in the office for sure help you at home and basically everywhere else.
Because I'll preface it with, I always thought before we worked together that I would have had empathy. That I was having sensory acuity, something you talk a lot about, awareness of what's going on. Really, I was pretty terrible at it.
Most people are until they get training.
It's mind-blowing how you can take that. And I'm learning still, I've got a long ways to go. But the payoff is so huge, even with just a little bit of work. Because if you're really trying to be understanding and you're trying to understand someone else's point of view, I think that comes across even if you may not master it.
It does.
And the payoff is just massive in terms of how things can go.
Right.
What unlocks.
Yep. So let's zoom up to a high level here. So really what we're saying is, and this is equally applicable to their home life, particularly their primary relationship. You're in the motivation and manipulation business. We all are. And don't be thinking manipulation's a bad word, because it's not. In the context I'm using it, it's only for people's highest and best good. Just got to make that disclaimer.
So kind of like influence.
Influence, motivation, yes. Because what are you doing, even with the 8-year-old kid who you're putting braces on? You want to do a great job at manipulating and influencing him to be excited about this, to be looking forward to the changes, to be on board with you about wearing his damn rubber bands or, whatever he's doing, and look forward to coming in to see you. You want them more motivated, because if they're not, you don't get the same result.
Yeah.
And they're not as happy, and so on and so on and so on. So with potential clients, potential patients, you definitely are trying to influence them and motivate them to take action to make their smile better or their mouth healthier or whatever it is that we're doing. And again, to do that, you don't do it by throwing gobs of technical information at them. You don't do it by you being judgmental or seeming to be ever so much smarter than they are, even though you might be. You do that by syncing up with them and understanding, taking in, and feeling truly what they need and want, because it's your job to satisfy them. It's not the other way around.
I wonder how many orthodontists or dentists listening actually first ask the patient, especially if it's a young adult, because, with the 8-year-old or 12-year-old.
Mom's bringing them
in.
in.
It's like, you got to have braces. But with an adult patient specifically, what are your goals? What does success look like for you? And keeping the outcome centered around using even their vocabulary.
Yes.
Words that they use.
Yes.
Restating their goal.
Their pace of speech, their volume of speech, their type of speech. Very, very important to creating a sync up, a matching, and a connection. Because if you don't have that connection, you're not going to be able to manipulate, inform, influence, and help. You just can't.
I have stuff going on with my teeth and mouth right now. I've got a rubber band in and braces on the inside of my teeth. I can't wait to get these things off.
I bet.
Next month.
Oh, yeah.
And I had my tongue tie lasered, actually, before all of this. And Carter Thomas, who you've met, is doing this.
Oh, wow.
And he's so good at connecting with people. I mean,
he is.
Hey man, how's it going? Fist bumping the kids.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting them in a mood.
Yes.
And you're like instantly that just rubs off on you.
You feel calm, you feel confident, you feel secure, you feel like he's got your back. All of that, those are impressions you want to create, because that leads to the influence that then leads to the
light. It takes pressure off. You're not scared, because people don't like mouth pain.
No.
The teeth.
No.
I mean, all of this can be
with stuff that's no.
And as he's doing some treatment with me, he had to give me this giant shot in my tongue. But he didn't tell me. He's like, oh, this is going to be so easy. And we'll go ahead and laser that tongue. And, it could help with this or that. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be
great.
a walk. And then all of a sudden I see this shot come out, and he kind of like sneaks it.
He sneaks it up underneath.
He's like talking to me, and he's just, because I'm in this device, so I can't talk. And like he's just having this conversation with me, like I can talk back to him.
But you really
I'm
can't.
just like, this needle comes out of nowhere, jams it in my tongue, and he's like, oh, this will be over in 2 seconds, and he keeps saying things that even he could have not been saying anything, and I could have been wondering in my head.
And making it far worse.
Or he could have told me, hey, we're going to have to jam up.
This giant needle's coming at you.
But like you're saying, it kind of goes back to he was manipulating me.
Totally.
And then he's doing the laser, and it's really cool because they have this foot thing they step on to power the laser. And he's kind of moving it back and forth, and he's like holding my tongue, and he's like, this is like playing the guitar, and I'm just clipping the strings. So he had these simple little analogies.
So you knew what he was doing.
But it's almost like he rehearsed it, and he knew. And in that moment, he just knows kind of a character to go into to make it so easy and a great experience. And yeah, it was a painful thing to have done, but I left in a good mood and like, oh, that was a piece of cake.
Well, as you know, in hypnosis, we have a saying, if you want somebody to go into a mood or state of mind, you go into it first. And that's so true. And Carter did obviously a great job with that. But that's the kind of thing. Now, he could not have done that, for an example, if he was just in his head wondering how he needs to actually position the laser and when he needs to give you the shot and what he's doing in the next room. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But he had to be plugged into you. He had to have his awareness on you. He had to have his focus on you and your outcome and how to get you from there in the mood and state of mind he wanted you in. So who can have their tongue lasered and walk out going, hey, that was fun. That's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Couple more points on how to keep patients happy and value your people skills as much as you do your technical skills. So looking at it from their perspective, you would want to, because I want to give you some specifics, give you some specific questions to think about. What do they need to see, feel, or hear in that experience with you? Whether it's the 8-year-old kid, the mom, the young adult, whoever it is. What's their evidence procedure that they're in the right place? Like thinking of people who are potential patients. What is their evidence procedure? How will they believe or know that they're in the right place? I'll bet some of our audience hasn't even thought of that. Do they like you personally? Are you comfortable to talk to? Do you have an engaging, pleasant look on your face? Are you speaking to them in a nice tone of voice? Are you welcoming? Are you friendly? Do you tell a good joke?
Getting in rapport, you're going to see that wall come down. You're going to see them responding and opening up more.
They will physically relax because, all the people listening to this know that, white coat, blood pressure raising, stress thing.
Maybe some don't. Maybe you should tell them.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Seen some people who didn't know this.
Really? I'm shocked. Okay, so this is a general statement, but many people have their blood pressure go up at least 10 points when there's a white coat that walks in the room. Just automatically. I think that's why they had, long ago they were smart and had the nurses and the TCs and everything wear scrubs.
Yeah.
Because the white coat thing is just very off-putting. Another question you can ask yourself is, what makes them believe that they're going to get what they came for? See, that presumes you have to know what they came for. You think it's just straight teeth. Might be something entirely different.
Easy. It's going to be easy for them to say yes, and it's going to be easy with time.
Yep. And lastly, how will they feel your service is worth the money that they're going to give you? Because you do not offer inexpensive services. So how will you know that they think that's worth it? So again, be very curious about their evidence procedure, because if you satisfy or address those and they're comfortable with these things and they feel like you get it, you understand their position on these things, then a yes is a very short step. But if they don't feel this and you don't know that, yes could be a very long walk.
So we've talked about it with the patient. Let's talk about it with the team, because the team, I can't tell you how many owners I talk to where it's the team and they did this and I had to let go 3 people last week and
Susie and Becky are fighting and
we can't seem to find good people here and maybe it's my area, and it's like everything but you. And sometimes you are literally the reason why something is happening or not happening. It's an internal versus external.
I'm going to say it's always them.
Yeah.
Because it's either a failure to lead, a failure of perception, or a failure to take action. If it's your business, you are the captain of your ship. Okay? If you've got people that don't belong there, they should be fired. And we've got lovely, wonderful examples of people that have gone way past when somebody should have been fired, and they're just miserable until they do, but they're worried about hurting people's feelings. If there's any of you out there, you need to get over that. You need to have a smooth running office for yourself, for your other staff, and for your clients. And you can't tolerate people being disruptive. And
I've seen people maybe on the other side where they're saying, oh, well, this person needs to be fired, and we trained them and they're still not doing it right. And then you dig into that though, and they actually haven't been trained well.
Oh, well, that happens too. They just assume they come prepacked and ready to be a TC. No, they don't.
I showed them one time and there's a SOP. Yeah. Here's the SOP.
Yeah. Here's our manual.
Do most people learn that way?
No, hell no. No, most people learn see one, do one, teach one. is how you should set it up, first of all. See one, do one, teach one. And obviously that's repetitive. So most people learn by doing with supervision or guidance or feedback. And you can't just hand them a manual or shove a piece of paper in their face. I'll go do this. Because then you get what you bargained for. And it's not going to be what you want. Also, again, thinking about outcomes, there isn't a more important outcome for our dentists and orthodontists out there than a smoothly running, successful practice, because that benefits everybody. If that isn't happening for any reason, then everybody is affected. So you have to look at it in the big picture. Is this practice smooth functioning? Is it successful? Is it growing appropriately? Is it paying its bills and decreasing debt and increasing sales and all that sort of thing? Because if it's not, you need to be relentless about ferreting out why and taking care of it and not wussing out.
Yeah. And being able to lead the team, mentor the team, coach the team, and having some empathy for where they're at. Because, like, they may never be to your level, especially if it's in the clinic. Like, is your expectation realistic to some degree? Because if your expectation on people is unrealistic, how they learn, how they're going to get up to speed, how much leadership or mentorship they need, how much training. I mean, you guys taught me something which was mind-blowing, that even the front desk to go through the script the right way takes 2 full days of role-playing and drilling the script. I would ask people watching or listening, have you ever done that?
I can tell you they haven't. And that's a true story. I swear to God. I had a business where the front desk receptionist had realistically a 3 or 4 sentence way to answer, a script to answer the phone. And it was absolutely stunning. It just a 3 or 4 sentence, it didn't change. It was always the same. And to get them to do it correctly and consistently literally took hours and hours and hours. It's crazy.
And now, even at HIP, we're setting records with sets because you taught us this. You did some drilling and role playing, and then we implemented that ourselves. And one of the new trainers has literally spent a month just role playing and drilling and listening to every call and reinforcing. And then our appointment setters had their biggest month. And
surprise, surprise.
Biggest contracts.
Well, and I will say, every single one of you out here needs exactly the same thing personally and professionally that we're telling you to do for your staff. Your staff needs feedback. They need guidance. They need a review of what they're doing to show what's working, what's not, and a gentle explanation of how to change it, and encouragement and support while they change it until they get it to be a habit. You all need the same thing, just saying.
And even going into the community, a lot of people talk to me and I don't want to have to wine and dine my referral sources anymore and, drop off or buy baseball tickets or do this. It's time consuming. And I get it does take time. I do believe there are easier ways and efficiencies to explore. And you don't always have to be the one if you're the owner doing it.
That's right.
But if you do show up, somebody told me, you know who it is, Elvis didn't send somebody in his place. Right. Where are the things where you may need to make an appearance? And Dr. Efros, you met upstate New York. He may not go to every event or spend, for the duration of an event. Let's say it's an hour or 2. He won't go the whole time, but he may stop by. And I saw something where he appeared at a basketball game and they gave away branded water bottles. He probably left right after that, but they got photos, they got a video, then they post it and tag the school, parents share it. And I mean, he is really good about being out in the community on the other side of the fence, to go back to ego and I don't have time for that. And let's just spend more money on the internet. Well, all of what Efros is doing, his ground game, when he goes to run paid advertising, people know that name. People see that brand. People go, oh, that's the guy.
First.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this just has so much value everywhere. It's not just one place. It's not just with patients. It's not just at home. It literally changes everything.
Do you know what they call a practice when the orthodontist or dentist is just doing it the way he likes to or wants to?
What is that?
A vanity practice. So you're either in business to make money, to grow people around you, whether it's your staff or help the folks in your community because you're doing work with them or for them, or you're just doing it to please you. Which is it? Because if you're just doing it to please you, you really just have a vanity practice. And frankly, that's a bit narcissistic. Then fine, do what you want, go where you want, throw money at things, but that's not going to be, that's one way to do it. Probably not the desirable way. And if your objective or your goal is that you want to have a thriving, successful practice so that everybody benefits, including you and your staff and your patients and your family, then you have to do things based on what the outcome is, not how you feel.
Yeah.
You have to do things based on what your outcome is, not how you personally feel. That's called maturity. We define maturity, as you know, as the ability to manage frustration or not getting your way without acting out.
You're saying we can't throw a fit?
You can't. We all do from time to time. I mean, that's just human beings. But the more fits you throw, the worse your life is going to be. That's just the way of it. So part of the training that we do is maturity and outcome orientation, because without those two things, you're kind of screwed. It's just not going to go well.
And another really simple thing you showed me in maturity, and, you maybe in the middle you have maturity, and then you have posturing and collapsing.
Oh, that's Chase Hughes' thing. I love that.
And you showed this clip of Andy Griffith, and we don't have to go into it, but if you can just imagine, hopefully you're old enough where we have some young listeners.
Hopefully Andy of Mayberry, if you, look at it on Cozy TV or whatever.
Yeah, YouTube TV has it too. I still watch it because I love to watch how he acts. And how he's so calm.
Composed. That's the word, composed. No matter what happened with Sheriff Taylor, he was never ruffled. The opposite of that, the two opposites would be collapse. That would be Barney Fife with his little bullet in his pocket here. Getting always, nervous and jerky. And posturing is the other one. That's when you're like blowing your ego up and posturing for more than what you actually can do. Having your mouth right checks your butt can't cash.
Well, imagine if you're collapsing with a team.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you're posturing to your team.
This should be resonating, by the way, with a lot of you out there right now. You're either collapsing, maybe you're being too much of a placater or people pleaser, or you're posturing like I know what's going on, and you're not connecting with a damn soul. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. You want to be composed, and I would say composed and connected. Composed and connected. Really about them, not about you. Because again, the more you make what you do, and I get that you went to school a long time, and I get that you paid a boatload of money to do that, and you've paid your dues, but so what? If you want a vanity practice, by all means have one and enjoy yourself. But I think for a lot of people out here, if they're struggling at some level in their business, that's partially why.
Yeah. And I do think most people watching or listening to this, they want to have a better future. Yes. They want to help more people. They want to be able to give back to their communities and teams. And so this information is just, it's so key to be able to do that. And you can be successfully stuck. Like you said, with a vanity practice, maybe you've paid off your debt. Maybe you are taking home $1 million or $2 million a year. But it's just that successful status quo. You're not continuing to grow.
Right.
You're not continuing to do more. And you may not even need to grow your production more, your revenue. Again, maybe you can become more.
Grow your people.
Grow your people.
Grow your personal life.
Yeah.
Grow your philanthropic endeavors.
There you go.
Yeah, any of that. You should never be stagnant.
Right.
I don't care how much money you're making.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that's a great segue into being broke.
Okay. What's the question?
Well, like you mentioned in the opening, a lot of people are carrying a lot of debt. And maybe it's from school. Maybe it's now they've done a startup. And so they're just stacking debt. and they open their doors, and maybe they're a startup, or they've been doing this for 20 years, but they've never really found a stride, momentum. And so, they're not poor, but they are broke because they don't have cash flow. They don't have surplus. And maybe in most cases, they're over leveraged. What's that do in terms of stress to most people?
Oh, it's huge. It's incalculable. And when you have that kind of stress on you, you can almost guarantee your personal relationships are going to fall apart too. And that's always a bad thing. So a couple of thoughts on how to avoid being broke. This is a good topic. And interestingly, it dovetails back into maturity. Pleasure delaying gratification, it requires maturity, of course. And I think a lot of high earners who also are carrying a lot of debt get into this thing where they've been so long in school and so long to get their business started and so long to put in all these horrible hours and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, now it's my turn. Well, maybe not. Again, what's your objective? What's your outcome? If you want to have a healthy, thriving practice and a healthy, thriving relationship at home, you don't necessarily just fling yourself in the direction of the latest I want. It just doesn't work that way. Also, make sure everyone in your office, including you, give your potential patients, that's where your money makers are, is the potential patients. Give them what they need to make a conversion, hopefully same day start. And that was going to require your empathy skills. Going to require empathy skills. External awareness, not technical explanations and details like they're so prone to giving, to prove how competent you are. Recognize, just take a step back for a minute and just notice how many times you walk around in the day and have conversations with people where really the only point to the conversation is to prove in one way or another how competent you are. Something that shouldn't need to be proven. And it's very off-putting for a lot of those people you're talking to. Just saying. That might be true for one or two of you.
Are you aware of that?
They won't. No, not until it's pointed out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Clearly, regardless of how much money you have or how much debt you have, you should absolutely be living beneath your means. That does not mean you give your wife who's unhappy with you because you're working a lot of hours your credit card so she just runs it up to the max every month. You need to have some self-control. Again, maturity, delay gratification. Living beneath your means and eventually becoming debt-free is the path to wealth. That is the path to wealth. And then, of course, from my perspective, you need to get quality and consistent feedback and training to get you squared away and have an accountability source so that you can develop these skills, because we are not given them just coming out the gate. Yeah. And you did not learn them in school.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, so let's maybe break it apart just for a minute. In terms of same-day starts, there may be a lot of reasons why offices are not succeeding at this.
Yes.
And I find that most of it is an emotional thing. It's not an actual logical thing, because logically, who would want to take their kids out of school again, drive for another appointment? The way that our culture is we want everything now. And so if you can make it easy, have them say yes, save them time, then why wouldn't they start right now?
They should.
And then I hear the argument, if they're doing something like aligners, which they didn't have to send that order out to a lab, oh, well, I can't same day start them. And it's like, no, a same day start would be signing contract.
Giving money or signing a contract same day.
I've seen people have 2 or 3 appointments because, we're different.
Oh, God, no.
We need to give more information. And, nobody wants that. Nope. And you're wondering why your conversion rate's going down and the other person across the street, theirs is going up. And then I hear, well, they're doing things unethical. Now, that could be true in some cases. I don't want to say they're not. I think it's more so 80-20 or maybe even 99-1%, where the person doing things unethical, it's typically not often, and it could happen. Most people are just getting more with the times and changing their systems and their protocol to consumer behavior. Like I talked about, people wanting things now. And there is a way to do this to where it can be easy. And if you want more information, I mean, we have books on this. We have other podcasts. We have
lots of
white
resources.
papers.
Yeah.
But there is an easy way. And so I want people to know that.
Well, you know what I hear when I hear somebody say, well, I can't close the deal, sign the contract, or take their money. They need more information. You know what that makes me think? Besides, you're kind of a dumbass. Take the money. Do not make it hard for people to give you money.
Mm-hmm.
The chances that they need more information is very small, actually. And they can certainly gather information along the way, but it doesn't do anybody any good if they don't give you the money.
That is true. And I also...
And I think actually that's a sign of the clinician not having confidence in his own ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's got to oversell them with information that they don't want or don't need. So according to him, they have enough information to make an informed choice. But see, that's a very self-absorbed way to look at it, not that rapport, other-centered empathy thing. If the patient's happy or the potential patient is happy, they're ready to say yes, they're all excited, do the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Don't throw a monkey wrench in it with more information.
There's an old saying.
Don't talk them out of it.
Time kills all deals.
Yes, and so does too much talking.
So does too much. Yeah, because it delays time. You know, more time goes on as you're
Right.
talking, obviously. And so, yeah, we're not. I don't want people to think we're talking about hard closing or
Not at all. That's nobody likes that.
Even
Nobody likes
selling, because I believe the best form of selling is to give. And
Yes.
so, are you going to give them an offer? Like you're saying, they're all excited, they're ready to go.
They have what they need.
Yeah.
So again, what is their evidence procedure that they're in the right place and they like you and they want to do this? If they've got what they need for their evidence procedure, I'm very confident as a qualified clinician that you will provide all the things they need to have along the way.
Mm-hmm. Another thing we see, which I noticed was in your notes, a lot of the startups haven't set any money aside, budgeted for marketing and advertising.
Oh, huge mistake.
So when they go to open
Huge.
their doors, they have
Nothing.
and they want $5 or $10,000 to somehow pack their schedule. And so the most successful startups are building a business plan 12 months before they even start.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding the right finance partner who actually wants to see that plan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because a good bank is going to want to know, well, what's your strategy?
Yeah, how's this going to work?
Yeah,
Sure.
how am I going to get my money back?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there, even in some cases, there's banks who will cut us checks on the behalf of the practice, and we can help people build this plan. They don't have to do it alone, but being prepared goes a long way, and then you have the right expectation. But you're going to have to spend money on marketing.
Absolutely guaranteed. And if you don't, it's the old, would you be willing to spend $5 if you got back $100? The answer should be hell yes.
Yeah.
Okay, duh. But if you don't spend the $5 in the first place, you're not going to, how are people going to know you? How are you going to differentiate yourself from the other people you may be in competition with in your town or your city? It's crucial that you have not just advertising, because there is bad advertising.
That's true.
But good advertising, quality advertising that actually gets you qualified people to make your phone ring. And then the next set of challenges takes hold. Who's answering your phone and what does that process look like? And is that successful to make an appointment? And then once they walk in the door, you've got a whole nother challenge, which is they have to be dealt with in a certain way to get them funneled through to a same-day start.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a process, but it absolutely starts with advertising. And to not do that, you will spend decades trying to create the volume and momentum on your own or with less effective methods.
Yeah, and the cheapest option probably is not going to be the best option.
Usually isn't.
Yeah. Whenever you wanted the best item, like if you could say dental school or residency, are you trying to find the cheapest price?
No.
Probably not. So in terms of building wealth and this whole being broke thing, another thing I see is having to buy the best equipment.
No.
You know, I need to offer the most
That's
expensive
vanity.
treatment.
That's vanity.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, you have a vanity practice. I don't want you to go to Walmart and get the used chairs and all that.
Right.
You don't have to go to that extent. But this idea that you allow people in your personal life, especially your spouses, to just run amok. with, I've got to have this, and you're an orthodontist now, and so I get to have this, and, we've got to have this house and this car and this. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about what's the long-term goal, and are you making things happen toward your goal, or are you just satisfying your vanity?
And with this whole finance thing and building wealth, you need to know how to look at a P&L, a balance sheet. You need to be having some financial data. I talk to so many people and they don't have this.
Well, that's part of that you can help them with.
Yeah, or they don't know how to read it and look at it. So it's like, what's your net profit? Low, I need to pay myself more. It's like, okay, but there's healthy margins that these types of businesses
That's right.
need
Normal and customary margins. Yeah. That's right.
So looking at that is key. And then, like you said, living below your means, but having some wealth creation strategies. Where are you going to put your money? How much of your money needs to be put away every month? At least 10%.
At least 10%. Yes. Regardless of how high your debt is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you also should have a significant emergency fund personally to satisfy about 6 months worth of living expenses for your home and family, and something similar in your practice.
Right. And this doesn't happen on day one.
No, something you build toward. You
Yeah.
build toward. But that also has to be part of the financial strategy. And the problem is most people who are extremely good, for example, being clinicians, orthodontists, dentists, physicians, they just assume that they're good at everything else, which, by the way, for those of you thinking about getting an aviation license, be very careful, because planes kill doctors and physicians more often than any other group, I think, because just because you're great technically and clinically doesn't mean you're great at other things like flying an airplane. So different things require different skills. And you have to have a respect for the fact that, yes, you've gone very, very far and beautifully in the skill set that you have, but that's not the only one out there. And it's only part of the skill set you need now. Mm-hmm. Because you could be the most brilliant clinician in the world and have absolutely horrifyingly bad people skills, and you will fail. And you'll probably get a divorce.
Well, let's talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
So we've talked about how to be successful in the practice. I think we've given them some good strategies on new patients, on the team, on wealth building and not being broke. And still, I know some of the most successful orthodontists, dentists, and their home life is not going so well.
Yeah.
How do we address what's going on there? And how do we not lose sight of our goal or outcome with our relationships at home?
Well, my position is that all of the same skills they need to really be thriving in their clinical practice, in every manner of that statement, are the same skills they need to be successful at home with their kids, their spouse, friends, family, and so forth. You really need empathy. You need to be able to read the room, come outside your head again, notice what's going on in front of you and respond only to that. Try and keep immaturity, vanity, self-expression, competency-driven behavior out of the picture, and be more, you are in a people business now. The moment you got married, you were in a people business. Now you're in a people business. You're not in a tooth business anymore.
And this is kind of your thing, couples, marriages.
It's kind of my thing, yeah.
Divorce.
It's my vibe.
What's the number one reason for divorce?
There are 3 reasons that bring people into divorce courts. And by the way, I think about 75% of people who end up in divorce courts should absolutely not be there, because divorce isn't going to solve their problem. They come in because they disagree. Basically, problem resolution skills suck. They disagree on money, they disagree on sex, and they disagree on communication, basically, is the 3rd reason. So again, all the same things that we've been talking about that make their practice thrive are going to be what make their relationship thrive. Most people who are in divorce court actually love each other, but their communication is absolutely horrible. Most people end up bringing into their marriage and parenting the same understandings, insights, or skill sets they had in high school. And they probably didn't even work well in high school.
That goes back to maturity.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that as your life grows and evolves and changes, you need to keep up. You can't just have your old high school value system or high school insights or ways of looking at things or rules when you get into marriage and having kids. It's just it's a different ballgame.
So I'll throw you some lines, and I've heard this stuff.
I probably have too.
I know for sure you.
Oh, I so have.
I work so hard on my business, and then I come home and I just want to relax.
I don't want to sweep the floor. Can't she watch the damn kids?
Yeah.
Not taking the dog for a walk.
I don't want to hear our story. I need some me time.
Yep. Okay. So, well, of course, everybody needs me time. I'm all about that. However, I would ask that person, first of all, what's your most important job? What do you think they would say?
Let's just say, be a good provider.
Well, if that was the answer they gave, and I think most of them would say probably to be a good orthodontist or a good dentist.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be wrong, by the way, if they're in a marriage, in my opinion. Your most important job if you're in a marriage is to be a good husband or wife, as the case may be. Okay? It is not to be a good orthodontist. Now, being a good husband is not going to be the thing that takes up the most time in the day for sure, but it is still your most important job because you actually took vows for that. You made a covenant for that. And the little humans that you might have brought into the world are depending on that. So
that's huge.
What you do in your job is lovely and perfectly fine, and I realize you help people, but your first commitment, see, everything doesn't have a priority of 10. They understand, you folks understand the concept of triage. If you come upon an accident scene, you don't just, hang out with the guy that bent his finger. You're going for the guy that had a heart attack or has, a compound fracture, is bleeding out. You've got to
hopefully
priorities.
Yeah.
So indeed, life has priorities. So because you are so dedicated to your job and away from your family so much, that makes it all the more important that when you open the front door to your house, that you realize your most important job just started. And if that's not syncing up with how you like it or how you want it, then please let her be with somebody else that will take care of her. Because being a provider, which is the answer you gave, is only half financial. The other half, especially for girls, God, we're so picky, is emotional. If you're not providing emotionally for your partner, then you're not a good partner. Because you could have, 10 figures in your bank account. It doesn't matter if she's going to bed lonely and you grumpy or tired or disconnected, or that's not a life.
Mm-mm. So maybe we talk about some strategies, because I do think a lot of people have the best intention, but also the road to hell was
paved with those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think people want to do a good job at this. Maybe they are really stressed out. How can they kind of reset themselves or get in the right frame of mind before walking in the house?
Resources. I think resources are very important. When you're in a battle, you need to have a well-operating rifle, lots of bullets, and probably some assistance from, your buddies.
Right.
You can't just be doing it all by yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where people like you and people like me come in. Use resources. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. But there are people who know a lot more than we do about things, and they can help. Mm-hmm. So getting rid of stress is a huge thing. But, I would ask, well, what's making you stressed out? Have you got your office in a chaos and a mess because there's too much drama and people aren't trained right, things aren't going right, you're not getting enough conversions, and et cetera? Well, you need to fix that, not just tolerate it and complain about it. Mm-hmm. Like, be proactive. Take the rose-colored glasses off and really take a hard look at what's going on, what needs to happen in order to get this goal. So again, we're back to outcomes. If the outcome is to have a thriving office, you relentlessly go after anything that makes that happen and eliminate anything that's getting in the way of that happening. Simple as that. And pretty soon, if you do that, with some guidance and support from people like you, and certainly getting some good marketing going and making sure when the phone rings, it's all, all that stuff, then that will take a lot of stress off. A smooth running office takes a lot of stress off, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. It's funny how that happens.
It is.
So when your stress is lower and you have more energy, you have more to focus when you actually get home. And by the way, your family's getting the leftovers, In either which way you slice it, they're getting pretty much leftovers. So your job then is to make sure your family is thriving and they have everything they need to thrive, which is not about you stomping around saying, I don't want to sweep the floor, do any laundry.
Something that helped me a lot is you and Scott talk about this method acting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would still give myself a low grade, but I'm improving. And I told Scott this story, and this was kind of the slap in the face for me, is my daughter, who's 7, told me something, and it was this exciting thing. And I was like, cool. And she's like, Dad, you're not really good at showing emotion. Like, I kind of...
She is a very smart child.
She's like, I need a little bit more. Like, and then she acts it out like, like,
you're so excited.
and I'm like, man, this 7-year-old's like schooling me here.
Just nailed you.
Yeah. And even when you're not feeling it, because that's the thing, it's like getting the leftovers and, I'm already kind of spent for the day and I just saw 100 patients. Again, you're really focused on yourself. And when you come in the door, you need to be out here. You need to be present for your wife. What does she need in that moment? She's been with the kids maybe all day, or had to go.
She's been without you.
Yeah, been without you.
However that goes.
And so what are they needing from you, and how can you kind of method act, or some people call it like an alter ego, or, athletes have strategies for this.
Practice it. Mm-hmm.
You practice it. Yeah. So,
well, it's all based on your outcome. So the more mature we get, the more we realize it's not about us. Just wrapping your head around that one concept would help a lot.
We could talk just about that.
Oh, for hours. It's just not about you, honey. Sorry. The minute you decided to open a practice, you took responsibility and stewardship over all kinds of people, not just patients, but also employees. The minute you got married or got in a serious relationship, you took stewardship for that too, particularly for the men. And needless to say, when you have kids, you have ultimate stewardship over them. You don't get to just go, "Now, I just don't feel like it right now." Sorry. Put your big boy pants on and let's go.
Mm-hmm.
You get yours later. Especially if you're the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. You are a good leader is always acting in the best interest and for the highest good of the people he serves.
And the people we remember, the people we read about, have that frame of mind, right? In history, most of the time.
Yes.
The people we remember, the photo of the patriarch we keep on the wall, it's all people who were doing this.
Yes.
And so success leaves clues. We can look and see, well, actually, this is my value system, but I'm really not showing up in that way. Mm-hmm. How do I remind myself of what I need to emulate? And sometimes that's looking at what others have done and looking at successful strategies.
And that's a great point, because you can always tell what people actually value. Not what they gave lip service to or what they, think or say. What people actually value, you can always tell, because it's what they're spending time, money, or effort to acquire.
That's good.
If you're not spending time, money, and effort to get it or do it or have it, it's not actually your value. So if you have a value of having a solid, connected, romantic, fabulous, wonderful relationship, but you're complaining when you walk in the door, you're not connecting with what your wife needs, and your kids are running around, that's not actually something you value.
Well, let's make it very direct in terms of spending time and money on something to help you. Mm-hmm. And I work with you. Like I said, I've brought you into masterminds, and you've been able to work with some of our partners, which has been amazing in a group capacity, one-on-one. You've gone and worked with their teams. I think a lot of people watching or listening are going to want to know what's the next step, and how do they know that they're also in a good place to maybe work with someone like yourself?
You'll know you're in the right place for wanting to take the next step if most of what we talked about resonated with you. If you can objectively, sincerely look at your life situation, just sort of step back, take it all in, notice what you'd like to improve or what you think could be better, or maybe things that you want to learn that you're not good at now, whatever that might be, then that would be the way that you know you're possibly a good candidate for future work. So I think it's true of most highly successful people, that they're very good at getting feedback and support and guidance to do those kinds of things, to achieve excellence and grow and develop in ways that you just can't do on your own. So the next step would be, personal coaching is usually the answer.
Yeah. How would someone go about getting a hold of you to maybe learn about your personal coaching?
Call me. And Jack, this is where you can put up my phone number. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll put it on screen.
Okay.
So call, text.
So yeah, you can call or text. We'll have a consultation. Go over. They're usually annual programs where you have a whole lot of access to me. We talk frequently. The subject matter can certainly be. I'm thanks to you, I'm very familiar with how orthodontic and to somewhat dental practices work, so I know a lot about that. I've trained some of your people on setting calls with offices and training staff and all that sort of stuff, so I can do all of that with you. But probably my forte would be relationships. So whether that's your personal relationship, like your spouse, or your relationships in your office, which are key to having it function well. That's all.
And I should say maybe you're still underselling yourself, but you've helped me with marriage. You've helped me with business partnerships. You've helped me with my team. You've helped me with speaking. You've helped me with strategies on less stress, maybe even public speaking and getting on stage. Even presenting myself. If you go back and watch podcasts from a year or year and a half ago, I may be in a hoodie or a hat.
Oh my.
And and maybe nothing's wrong with that in some settings, but it's like, you
up the game.
Yeah. And you said something even really profound, just to kind of derail for a second, is how you're showing up shows how you respect the other person.
Oh, yes.
That made me think a lot, because we are talking to doctors. What we do is not inexpensive. And if I'm showing up in a hoodie or what I feel is comfortable, that's a me thing, that I'm not showing up for them.
Right.
Because if I'm showing up for them and having the ultimate respect, wouldn't you look good and, clean shaven? And
yes.
And so I think those
collared
things,
shirt, all that.
Taking that seriously for them is big. But I mean, I don't think there isn't an area in my life that you and I haven't talked about.
And we did have fun with kids too.
We had fun with kids. I mean,
that was great fun.
I can't talk enough about discipline strategies. And so many of our friends and family members, both parents aren't on the same page. Grandparents aren't on the same page. And the kid starts running the house.
Yep. Every time.
And almost everyone I know between, ages of 20s to 30s, and it may even be beyond that, the kid dictates what happens. And it's like,
sometimes
literally,
when they're two.
and they're in some ways so much smarter than we are.
Yeah.
Because they just play us like a fiddle. What are strategies to actually take control? Because this is a big thing for kids. And again, I'm kind of derailing, but
it's all part of the same thing.
What is our job as parents to produce, or not produce, but train somebody who's going to go out and be a good citizen, who's going to give back, who's not going to act like an entitled jerk.
Confident, happy, successful, resourceful, all of those things. Yeah. Again, it's all about outcome. Every single possible thing you do with your child, every day, every moment, should have that outcome in mind. So when you're correcting them, when you're praising them, when you're teaching them, whatever it is, it's for that outcome. When they leave your house, you want them to walk out a certain way. It's all about outcome.
And you should have a moral obligation. I mean, it's your duty as a parent. You decided to have kids, or
that's right. They didn't ask to be born.
And so it's a responsibility. It's a stewardship. So it isn't like, and I can relate. Again, I'm spent. I'm burnt out. I'm stressed out. I'm just going to let it slide. Again, we're so focused on ourselves. So,
but how do you get accountability to get out of that? Or where do you get feedback to say, you might want to look at it this way?
Yeah.
That's
Julie.
why, well, and you. I mean, you're doing that for their business. I can do that for their business, personal, and emotional life. It's all very much the same thing. And I think it's very, very important to take seriously. If you want to be successful at anything, you can't do it by yourself.
Right.
You just can't. So if you want to, you can give me a call. We'll set up a time to talk and go through what the program looks like and what you can expect. But it's pretty comprehensive. And my outcome at the end of that is that you achieve all the goals that we set out in the beginning.
I love that. So just to show, or some people may be listening so they can hear this, we'll just play a few quick testimonials from doctors who've worked with you.
That'd be great, because I think it's nothing like having people comment that have actually been through the training.
It was wild. Each person that would get up there and talk, how similar we all are with, I guess, whether shared experiences or shared personality types or different things that we deal with. And so every single person that she would, do her methods and different things, each of us could get something out of it if you're paying attention to what she's doing. It's just so cool, everything that she can offer.
But I had the pleasure of sitting next to her both nights at dinner, and the work I did with her, while a little bit uncomfortable, was definitely beneficial. I thought it was fantastic. My wife and I just happened to be talking about how with a kid in college and a kid in high school and a kid in middle school, we probably need to be talking to somebody at some point to make sure that we're not screwing them up any more than we did for the first 15 years of their lives. So I'm going to be in touch with Julie actually after this meeting is over.
And I had my own breakthrough myself. I suffered from a lack of confidence in my decisions, and just being able to not perform and being vulnerable is something that I don't often get to do. So feeling comfortable, feeling open in that space, because everybody put their guards down. And, we all moved as one, and because we struggle with a lot of the same things. And so Julie was amazing to work with.
The way that she shifts your mindset and, stops you from even saying anything about the past is just very remarkable. Like I was telling her at dinner last night, I've never met anyone that approaches that type of coaching in that way. Everyone else wants to let you tell the history and why you react a certain way. And she finds a way to just focus on the positive and make you move forward. And I do feel lighter and feel different going forward. And, we'll see, can I make sure that I implement all of those new things in my daily life? But if I can, then that's, truly life-changing.